So I'm going to go see Jerry. Do you have anything to say to him? I'm
Jerry?
putting on video. I'm going to Jerry's place in 4 days.
In 4 days. Jerry, you haven't called us. You haven't come and visited. You obviously must not like us anymore. So, Jerry, we expect you to come down and have breakfast with Arnie and myself and Pat.
Right.
We haven't seen Pat either, by the way.
Yeah.
We expect that to happen the next 2 months before Christmas. So, Jerry, we look forward to seeing you. And by the way, you'll buy us all breakfast.
That's right. I like that.
2020.
And Donald Trump 2020, yes. And Donald Trump 2020. Yeah, I'm a big Donald Trump fan.
So be sure and get that photograph with that picture for Jerry, right?
Yeah, come down for breakfast. I'll bring the photograph, Jerry.
Okay.
Hey, Doug. Ron says he has a video of you, and he's going to show me later. So I'm just going to answer you even before I see what you said, and invite you to come up to Calgary sometime, and we'll show you some hospitality that we weren't able to give you last time you were near us and had to go home because of bad weather, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, come see us sometime, Doug, before we get down there in about a year.
Yeah, for sure.
And his dad was quite a guy. I wrote a book for Bill after his dad passed away. I'd taken video. Bill and I were down in Tacoma for the funeral of 4 policemen that were killed down there. They were having coffee before their shift, and some guy came in and just shot them in the coffee shop, killed them all. And he was killed the next day or so in Seattle. He was going to shoot another policeman. The policeman saw him in the rearview mirror in the dark and was able to shoot him before he got shot himself.
Wow.
So anyway, we were there for the funeral, Bill and I, and there was 1,000 Mounties down there, and they had a helicopter KOMO showing 1,000 Mounties going into this great big arena for this funeral. Talked about how all the Mounties came down from Canada. There was 10,000 policemen there all over the world. But while we were down there, Bill got word that his father was really sick in a hospice in Kelowna. I was going to go home. I decided to go with Bill back to Kelowna to see his dad for the last time because I'd seen him a couple of months earlier and had coffee with him and his wife and Cindy. And I said, I got it out of him, this war story. And he didn't talk about it much, but I said, I want to come back soon and get this on video for your kids and grandkids. And he says, oh, that was nothing, that was, everybody had a story over there. And I said, yeah, but it only happened once to their dad and their grandpa. Would you let me videotape you and you give this story again? He said, well, I suppose I could. Well, now he's sick, not going to make it. So Ron gave me his video camera, and I went back with Bill to Kelowna. And for 2 afternoons, for about 2.5, 3 hours each, he laid on his deathbed telling me war stories. I got it all on video. And I was intending to do a video for Bill and the rest of the family. But all of his photographs had been destroyed in a fire when they got transferred to Paris. He stayed in the Air Force after the war, made a career of it. So all their photographs had got burned up except for a couple. So I couldn't really make a video of this without just showing him laying there and not looking well, which wouldn't be pleasant for the kids to see. And I decided to make a book instead. So I made this book using Apple Books. And you wouldn't believe how nice a job they do. You just get on the computer, you lay out everything you want, the cover, the inside jacket, the font, the photographs, the paper, and then the layout, and it does it exactly the way you did it on the internet, on the computer. So I got the few pictures that he had remaining and used the transcript from the audio, of him telling me all these stories, and wrote it down basically according to what he was saying. About how he started in training, and then he was in training in Winnipeg, and he used to go walking along the railroad tracks. And I found on the internet a picture of a bunch of airmen standing on a train during training in Manitoba, right where he was, and the kinds of airplanes he was training on.
Nice.
The #1 Manning Depot in Winnipeg. Pictures of that. Everything is on the internet now. And the various airplanes he trained with, he tells about it, and I go and find those same airplanes on the internet with drogue chutes like this thing there. That's what they used to drag behind airplanes and use it for target practice.
Huh?
And then how he went over on a ship to Europe to fly over there, and They were almost shot down. A number of Canadian ships were sunk. Guys were killed before they even made it over there. Castor, where they would go in early and plan a route for their bombing missions. And then
That's amazing, eh?
And then Ron found this website. This guy in Poland does computer art. And one night when Doug was flying back from a mission over Berlin, he's 21 years old, he's flying this Lancaster, he's got a crew of 7. You think of a 21-year-old now. They're wearing the ball cap backwards and the crack of their arse still showing out of their shorts and playing hacky sack on the corner. Well, now, in those days, 21-year-old was flying a Lancaster, flying bombing missions over Germany. So anyway, they came back and this Messerschmitt attacked and shot 2 engines out of his airplane. So
Wow.
here's this guy in Poland that had just made this painting of this Messerschmitt and just attacked a Lancaster at night. Exactly the same situation he encountered.
Wow.
He had 2 of his guys wounded in the back, screaming in pain, and his hydraulics were shot out, his compasses were gone, his radios were shot out, couldn't even navigate, couldn't get the wheels down, 2 guys wounded in the back, something like 147 bullet holes in the airplane, in the fog, midnight. And he said the Royal Air Force had put these auxiliary radios in the back of the Lancaster, and it was called Darky. And it was in the event you lost your main radios, you'd have one more option to make communication, get a steer to a emergency airfield. He said we never tried it before, but we had no option, so we pull out Darky and we start talking into it, and sure enough, we get a response from an emergency airfield in northern England, and they give us a steer to the direction to land to this airport. And it was foggy, so they had flare pots out to mark the sides of the runway. And here he is landing. He's trying to control his airspeed with no instruments, just by feel, and not want to stall the airplane. And the wheels are still up in the belly. And he landed beside the runway on the dirt. And of course, lots of noise and dirt flying up in the windshield, and the engines stopping, and the props bending and scraping and bouncing. And it all came to a stop. Everybody walked away. The next day, you got a telegram from Bomber Harris, who was running the whole air campaign over there, saying, "Congratulations, you've been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross."
Wow. I
So,
thought they were going to give him a heck for breaking it when he
No.
landed.
he was already pretty broken. So I get on the internet and I find this other painting, this same guy. This is what it would have looked like.
Wow.
And I took this, it was a daytime shot, and I made it look like a nighttime shot with his co-pilot. He didn't have a co-pilot, but that's basically what it would have looked like. And so I got on the map and drew a line from where he had done this bombing mission, where he was shot right at this location about halfway back. He was trying to go back to London, but he ended up going to this airfield.
Wow.
And then that's what it would have looked like, laying in the dirt afterwards. And there was a picture of his telegram saying he's been just awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. There's the
Boy, you got it all, eh?
there's
Yeah.
what the DFC looks like. That's the actual entry in his logbook.
Movers.
And he talks about pre-mission briefings, getting weather briefings, and here he talks about after that incident, it was about the 12th or 13th flight, and he had to do about 40 missions. And his radio man, I think it was, or navigator, one of them, I guess it says here, flight engineer, was so shell-shocked from that incident, he couldn't get in the airplane again. He was just totally wasted. Like he'd given everything he could, and he was just too petrified to get back in the airplane. He said, I sympathized with him. He said everybody gave what they could. Some were able to go further than others, but they all gave max. But in those days, they didn't know what post-traumatic stress syndrome was, so they counted it up to cowardice. And they drummed him out of the Air Force for lack of moral fiber, they called it. He said, I felt really bad, Now they know better. So they got a replacement engineer and finished their 30 more missions, at which point the whole crew was stood down and they had survived the air campaign and could go back to different duties, training or something. But the flight engineer they had still had to do 4 or 5 more missions before he would have enough under his belt to quit. So he was going to be having to go to another aircraft, another crew. And he said, sure enough, he got killed. His airplane was shot down before he could finish the 4 or 5 missions that he had to do. And he was telling me this, and he got a tear in his eye. He said, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have polled the rest of our crew. We would have had to be unanimous and agree to do 4 or 5 more missions to get him through. But of course, everybody would be jeopardized again.
Mm-hmm.
So he felt bad about that, and what if, you know. But that's just the way it was. And that's what it looked like when you were flying into flak. It was really scary.
Oh, yeah, it would be.
Airplanes bouncing around, and you're seeing airplanes right beside you going down.
Awful.
Some of them getting cut in half, and, you know, hitting other airplanes. And then he went to, after he finished his missions, he was a trainer. He would train air crews to how to evade fighters, and he'd be flying fighters and coming in and doing mock attacks, training them in evasive maneuvers.
Wow.
And then he came back from the war, and they all got paid in $50 bills and never had so much money. This is the type of boat he came back on. I think it's the same one. So then he continued his post-war duties and became a test pilot, and he flew just about everything they had. And then when they moved to jets, he flew the first early jets. He got the speed record for Canadian aviation from Toronto to Edmonton in this CF-100. That's him actually in a newspaper article showing this new G suit they had.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a picture of him in a newspaper article. And then they got posted to Paris. That's where when the fire happened, they lost everything. And after Bill and I graduated from Depot, a year later, we were both single, we went down to Colorado Springs where his dad was second in command of operations there at NORAD, North American Air Defense. And he got to know Alan Shepard, the astronaut, the second guy that went up in space. Because Alan Shepard was a test pilot too, and they would do exchanges between Americans and Canadians. And Alan Shepard was actually up in their house in Ottawa for dinner one evening with some other guys, and he told about that. So then I put some pictures of him when he first met his wife, and the 3 kids, this Bill, the guy I trained with, his brother and their sister. And that's later years, about when I last saw him.
Wow, you did a wonderful job. You got it all, even what you didn't have, eh?
Yeah, just because the internet is so full of stuff.
Yeah.
And then a good fitting end to the book was, he said he regretted that he didn't do more fishing. He loved fishing. And they had a picture of him waving from the fishing boat, so it was a good way to end the story.
Yeah.
Sure.
So then I included a poem about high flight where an RAF young guy went up and talked about touching the face of God up in the clouds, and it became a very famous one that Ronald Reagan actually read in an address he made called High Flight. And this guy that wrote the poem, he's only like 18 years old.
Yeah, he's American in the RAF.
Yeah, American in the RAF.
Yeah.
And that's the poem there?
That's the poem right
Right.
here.
Okay.
It says, "Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence, hovering there. I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long delirious burning blue, I've topped the winter-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark or ever eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod a high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God." And then these are all the airplanes from his logbook that he flew post-war.
Wow.
During
You
the
did it
war.
all,
There's-
eh?
Did a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
That's for sure.
So this is my only book, but it says copyright 2015 by Geriatric Books, limited, very limited.